I'm Francis Sani, and I'm on People.
Today's guest has worn a couple of hats, sometimes simultaneously. He's shaping the future of work and innovation in Africa through ecosystem building and digital transformation. From leading accelerator programs at CcHub, Co-Creation Hub, where he partnered with global players like Facebook, Airbus, and Google to support African startups, to strategic roles at Helium Health and Magic Fund, Francis has spent years at the Center of Technology and Entrepreneurship Support. He currently serves as technical advisor to Nigeria's Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy. In this role, he leads the groundbreaking 3 Million Technical Talent 3MTT initiative. At the core of his work is a commitment to empowering talent, scaling innovation, and building systems that power Africa's future of work. We present to you Francis Sani. Hi, welcome to On People. Welcome to On People, Francis.
Thank you so much.
So excited to finally have you here. Yeah, so today we're expecting an awesome episode, like as always. But just to start, you've worn many hats. You've been startup advisor. You've worked at the helm of VC affairs. People have run to you for a lot. You've been the director of a massive nationwide program. But a lot of people know you because you're quite, like, you would say, like the male darling of tech. We have the female darling of tech to me, though. You're like the male darling of tech, right?
Knows me to be
Really? Okay, so that makes it easier. So what's a part of your story that really makes it into your bio, or you feel like most people do not know yet? That they know you, but they don't really know you. That has been crucial for your growth.
I think it's interesting. When I was looking at this question earlier, I feel like for me, and perhaps, anyone who reads my ramblings in my newsletter has a feeling for it. I would say two things. First is something called Dream Seminar, and the second is philosophy, and they're kind of interlinked. But I'll start with Dream Seminar. So Dream Seminar was, so in uni, I had started, I did politics in uni. I became the PRO of my department as a fresher at the end of my first year. And I was in school politics all through, volunteered a lot, also did, I ran about 6 businesses. At that point, I thought I was going to be a businessman. But also because I was just doing stuff in school, I felt like that was the path I was going to go on. But then in my final year, the Catholic Church Association, NFCS, they reached out to say I should come, be the daddy welfare, essentially the welfare director within the association. To be honest, I turned it down the first time because I was like, I had a goal to be the first president, one of the youngest presidents of the Faculty of Science, which was the largest, so for me it was like, I'm going to be the first youngest president of the largest faculty in one of the most prestigious schools, in Nigeria. So I turned it down, but then I think a couple of weeks later, an elderly person, not elderly, but a senior colleague, stopped me and had a chat and convinced me to take it, right? And, perhaps the most important moment in my life was actually not just being the welfare director, because that was nice, but it was what I got to do as a member of the welfare, of being the welfare director. So one day, because now I have to go to church more often, I hear about a seminar on a Saturday that is happening the next Saturday. I go to the seminar. It was incredible. There was just this incredible man who was talking about dreams, and now, there's so many, you can achieve your dreams. And I was like, yeah, preach. And in usual fashion, at the end, I was like, this thing is so cool. How can we get more people here? So I went to meet them and I'm like, okay, how can I volunteer? You inspired me. I want to be able to say, okay, let me get more 10 people, get a couple of my friends to come. They're like, oh, welcome, come and join us. And it takes me to go meet the person who's in charge of the thing. And I go meet him and the guy's like, oh, perfect. Thanks for joining. But it's like, oh yeah, I'm a final year student and I'm graduating this
This
semester.
semester.
So volunteer becomes the chairman.
Oh my god!
Right? And I think it was quite interesting, right? Because for me, I was like, what was going to happen and what would I make of this? And I think that was for me a key moment in my life. The more interesting thing
Turning
was that,
point.
that first thing I went to had about 20 people. The next one, the first version we took it outside of the church, did it in a hall at 270 people.
Oh, wow.
The next one we did, we went to the biggest hall in school at about 800 people.
Oh,
And then
wow.
the one after that, I had 1,000 people, right? But the key thing for me was every time we did one, the next semester, I would just be walking randomly in school and I'll have someone come up to me and say, like this session that you did, this speaker that came, these things they said, it changed my perspective, right? And the fulfillment I got from someone coming to me and saying, oh, this thing that you did helped, to make a change in my life was extremely fulfilling. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to be selfish for the rest of my life. And I'm only going to do work that's going to give me fulfillment. Right? And I was
makes
like,
a ton
okay,
of
so,
sense.
that's the stuff I'm going to do. And, that for me was key. And that's when I went on to say, okay, what do I know how to do? I know how to do business. I was like, okay, let me go and learn how to do management consulting. So I can help entrepreneurs, help them do better businesses. So they come and tell me that I helped their business.
I know.
And that has then led into my journey of philosophy and understanding of human expression and understanding of the purpose of, humanity and the purpose of life. And I think that's a real strong foundation for everything I do. It has gone from doing these seminars to help people figure out, their journeys, to me then going on a journey of life to saying, I want to spend as much of my life as possible doing stuff that helps people, helps organizations or businesses become better. And that's my life journey. And that's, the foundation of everything that I've done since then.
Wow, Francis, I mean, there's so much to peel and take away from this. I've read some of your pieces, right? And I know that you're one of the very few people that may have actually reached self-actualization on the Maslow's theory of needs, right? And why do I say that? You're actually maybe one of the first digital nomads that I know. I know a few others, but you were one of the first ones, and you spent a lot of time like just traveling and living like a nomad. I just didn't understand what you were doing. I envied it from a distance, but I knew I couldn't do it. Now I wish I can, but it speaks to fulfillment and how that has been what you've chased for a while. I think that you're a great salesman and you can sell anything. You almost tell the people you can. So it's interesting to now know that what you studied in uni was politics.
It was actually botany, not politics.
It was
Oh, wow.
I
Oh,
was pretty good at
plants.
it actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
There must be a correlation
my team was
between.
a national champion for the spelling
I
bee.
can't-
So
I-
there's the scientific names of plants.
Yeah.
There's actually a national championship for that, and my team from Ife went to Unilag and we won that championship once.
Wow.
Yeah, so-
Wow. So, I mean, you can sell anything.
Yeah.
You can, and just obviously seeing how this design seminar was growing from 10, to double digits to hundreds to 1,000, that you were probably the best chairman that they never knew they needed until they had you. So, but it's good. And it's good. It just shows that in terms of skills, there's certain things that people even have to realize of themselves first before they can become who they are now.
So true.
So it's nice to see that path.
Yeah, the self-actualization journey is worth dwelling on. But moving on. So when we take away the prestige of, your glamorous titles and all the things that make you shine in public light, right? What's the most unglamorous part of your job that people don't see?
Exactly.
What's the interesting assumption that people make about your job?
To be honest, I think and I would be forever grateful to the minister for considering offering me the opportunity to be able to come to work with him and on this journey that he's been on. I think it's been a privilege. I think in many instances, a lot of us do work in the private sector, and we never truly dedicate time to understanding governance and understanding, what it actually means to build a nation. We have very strong opinions about what it should be as Nigerians. But, frankly, I think we have very little education. A large amount of our population, especially the elites also, have very little education about what it actually means to run the country, right? And what it means to build the country. I think the most unglamorous thing I would say, especially coming in from a private sector background into this sort of environment, is control. In the sense that, and it's something that people talk about and, say in a bad way that your government is slow, but, the reality is that government exists to serve its citizens and to protect the interests of its citizens. And what that means is that when you have that responsibility, you have the responsibility to ensure that there's protection for everybody. When we think about things from a private sector standpoint, we're often thinking in terms of your target users, in terms of your clients. Well, when you're in the government setting, you have to think about everybody, right?
Yes.
Whether the people that you think you should take care of or not, everybody is, a citizen. And I think for me, that's been one of the probably most unique insights in terms of thinking not just, from a private individualistic standpoint, but thinking about the interests of the citizens of the country and the interests of the nation. But what that comes with is that control. It means that you often have to do work where you don't have control over certain outcomes or certain elements of the outcomes that you're working on, either due to bureaucracy or due to, balancing checks. And I think for me, it's not the best part because it means that sometimes you can do your piece and you need to wait on someone else or a different institution to be able to do the other part, and there's not much you can do. And coming from a situation where you have your budget, you have your company, you have the ability to be able to hire and fire, it's a different mindset, and that's probably been the biggest unglamorous thing. I think the most interesting assumption, and this is tied into my larger comments, is and this is a little bit, I'm not sure what, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say. I'm not supposed to say. Hopefully, I don't say something that I'm not supposed to say. But I feel like there's this notion today that the problem of the country is civil servants, right? And like with many assumptions that we tell ourselves in Nigeria, we make these assumptions often without data, without a data-backed system, and with a generalization. And I think. Yes, are there challenges, within the civil service? I think so. I think are there potentially instances where, continuously across board, a good number of folks potentially maybe don't make things go as fast as they should, potentially. But to be honest, I feel like having the privilege of working with civil servants or working with career public servants has given me a different light. Right. I think the first thing that, that comes to me and what I tell people is like, when you say civil servants or you say this, like in reality, these are your neighbors, these are your uncles and your aunties, right? If you personalize, the people in the government and the people who are doing work in the government, then it's a different perspective to it. I genuinely think there's a lot of well-meaning civil servants. I've worked with incredible people within the civil service. I think there potentially are some structural designs that we need to have the courage to fix. And not just the government, but also the citizens have a role to be able to request for some of these things, right? But just for me, the biggest assumption is, civil servants are bad. I don't necessarily think so. I think that, in many instances, either there's not as much leadership or the right sort of resourcing or the right sort of environment hasn't been created. And it's an assumption that is hurting us because if we look at it, from a data-led standpoint, we actually could potentially solve some of the problems.
Those are some very deep insights. Being a government enthusiast, I'm sure that I've also furthered some of these conversations, where people drive into the details of what civil servants do and how it in turns either slows down the progress of society and all of that. But hearing your insight has really, really helped. It's helping me rethink my position. Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Just going back to something that, you touched on with people on the outside making certain assumptions without data, and generalizing. And that's something that human beings tend to do all the time. And even right now, I am generalizing as I say that, right? But when you look at it, at the core of it is a lack of trust. And it's not even the core. It's a semi-core to the real core. The real core is that we do not understand. Comprends pas, if that makes sense. We do not understand. We don't understand, but we don't. And so because we don't understand, we don't trust. So how do you build trust? How do you work within your team, especially because you are the program director for one of the biggest initiatives that has come out in the last couple of years, 3MTT, in building that technical backbone? How do you even build trust so that people even say, okay, what you're working on works, what you're working on is good, and what you're working on is good for society in general, considering that Nigeria has so many states, different regions, different interests as well. How are you building trust in that team in general?
I think it's a constant process, right? I feel like, if anything, the past 2 years of going into public service has been a significant learning journey for me, and continues to be. I constantly feel like I have to learn every day.
Yes.
I think perhaps my last role prepared me for this a little bit better. In addition to the experience at CcHub, but particularly in my last role, because that was the first role in which I was responsible for defining direction and leading the team directly from a CCU standpoint. And one of the things that I experimented with, which I wasn't sure if I should have back then, was actually a significant portion of my one-on-ones when I was in Magic were almost therapy/philosophy sessions than performance reviews.
Yes.
And I found that when I helped my team to be able to see themselves and as their individual selves, their individual goals, their individual purpose for life in the work that they were doing, it changed the way people thought about ownership.
Yes.
I think ownership is perhaps the most critical thing when it comes to building, organizations, and also just excellence. And I feel like ownership is personal.
Yes, it is.
It has to come from the individual, by very design. And if the individual doesn't feel a strong sense of connection to the work and the reason for the work in their own personal lives,
beyond salary,
beyond the salary, they would never be able to. I don't think they would be able to, give as much as is required for you to also deliver excellence. And I think I learned that and refined that, with the team at Magic. They gave me a lot of feedback, and I think I've tried to just bring a little bit of that to, the team under the leadership of the minister, at least, within the 3MTT team, which is, and it's easier in 3MTT because the impact is clear. What we want
very
to do is clear.
evident.
And it's just really about then helping people to see that, in the very first place, many of the folks we have on the team, as part of the process of bringing them on the team, it's been a statement of, what do you want to do, in terms of where you're at now, what do you want to do with your life, what do you think is most important? And if they get to the point where they see that this is something that is critical for themselves as individuals, I think it then makes it easier from then on.
It does.
And I think that has been critical in terms of building trust, because that then helps people to connect. I think the second piece is then excellence. I think something that I'm learning is, I share this with the team, that you want to, I think, yes, organizations are great and people work at organizations, but ultimately the work we do is for ourselves as individuals.
Yes,
right?
it is.
So true.
So when you do work and when you deliver, yes, you're doing a good job, so your boss, can hit his targets, or so the company can hit its targets, but you're doing that for yourself.
Ultimately.
Right. And I feel like that culture of excellence and helping people see the importance of excellence, not for the work or the company, but for themselves, and seeing it as you're in this particular position, you have ownership.
Yeah.
You have the ability that you would usually not have in all organizations to be able to design,
Yes.
right, and to be able to create stuff. And I think for me, this was something that Mr. Tunji Lesho and HM and also Femi Don't Get mentioned on one rooftop evening in CcHub. I don't know if you were there at all.
Possibly.
But I remember it clearly. It was like, you have to apply yourself. Right? You have the platform. You have to apply yourself. And I think when people see, number one, that they can connect from an ownership standpoint, but they also see that they can potentially use this as an opportunity to be the best version of themselves. It's going to be challenging, but we'll create an environment for them to push as much as possible to become the best of themselves. I find that trust is then easier because they know that they are doing these things for themselves as well, and also doing it for a greater good that is beyond them.
I love it. So a couple of things. Ownership. I think our first episode on people, we had Babajide just hamper and go all in on ownership. So ownership, excellence, but also even having people's values, personal values align with the company's values, or in your case, the ministry's values as well. And just using it as a platform for you. The work is for you ultimately. And that's right. I think those are things that I've seen you do over the last almost 10 years now, 9 years. And so I can attest to that. That truly is how you build trust in a team as well. Thank you.
Yeah, it was so good to hear you say that, approaching trust building from caring about the other people, just beyond the work. And then when you get to the point where people see that you're really interested in them becoming better than they currently are, then they see why they should pour themselves into work. That makes a ton of sense. Speaking now about your work from the standpoint of a person who harnesses the outcomes of a system, right? The educational system in Nigeria, the educational ministry recently upgraded the curriculums, very exciting to see. But now asking you, because you're on the receiving end of the education system, because the input determines what you get as far as talent is concerned, right? So if you could make any inputs, if you could contribute anything to the Nigerian education sector, to better prepare people for work based on what you have seen so far, what would you do?
I think, and I tend to be philosophical for a lot of things. So I like to come to earth a little bit. I feel like, especially at the scale, because there is a scale problem that we have today in terms of the number of children out of school, in terms of the current infrastructure, in terms of the current number of teachers, the compensation and welfare for those teachers. So we need to figure out scale. Right, I think that's the challenge. That's the great challenge of Nigeria's education, sector. And I think the Minister of Education, I think the new one has been extremely bullish in the past couple of months. HM as well, in terms of the thinking of the application of technology to driving these problems, has also been extremely bullish. And there's currently the National EdTech Strategy, which was birthed by both HMs, by HM, Dr. Bosun Tijani, and then is now also being collaborated on very closely with the Ministry of Education. And I think that in addition to all of that, quickly the Education Ministry has rolled out the new curriculum and all of the initiatives that they have. I think we're on that path, and the strategy, when it goes live, I think it would allow us to be able to figure out ways to use technology. From my viewpoint, and I say this as a layman, I feel like every job I go into, I'm just a project manager because I often change sectors every 2.5 years. So I'm not a specialist here. But from my viewpoint, I think that we need to be able to do things that allow people to understand and see what they want to do in relation to themselves. It sounds philosophical.
It is
but,
very.
We know a lot of people go through their first 20 something years in life without direction. And I feel like it's lost productivity for us all. if the formative years, especially because those are the years where you have the ability to tinker,
Yes.
to explore, and if there isn't as much opportunities for people to do that, then it means that at the point where they are doing so, they're doing so when they're getting into the workforce.
Yeah.
There's responsibilities, there's black tax, because we have a not so rich population.
Population,
So
yes.
the parents or the families have invested money into those formative years, so they expect an ROI.
Yes,
Returns,
the
yeah.
investments,
Right? And,
yes.
it's not at that point that you get to do stuff. And I think just drawing from my own experience as someone who had the privilege, yes, I grew up in a small town, but I had the privilege to be experiential. So for me, it's experiential sort of learning and systems that allow people to go into real world environments, right? Like when I started probably representing the church in Bible quizzes and interstate doctrine competitions. I was in Jos by 11 on a national competition.
Wow.
Did hundreds of Bible quizzes, right? Volunteered in the church youth association, volunteered, as altar servers, got into uni, did the businesses, volunteered, and I think all of those different things that make that experiential, they provide a certain understanding and context of life that you cannot get just by being in the four walls of a classroom.
That's
Yes.
so true.
And I think for me, that's the
leverage
key
that.
thing we need to figure out. If people do that earlier, number one, they get to experience different things. They get to learn some of these critical skills. We'll likely be able to unearth our genius a lot more. Because the reason why I also say it is, if you think about this, and this is something I say quite often nowadays, which is we are living at the cusp of a new age for humanity. I don't think we appreciate it enough. Like I think for me, just the fact that we are alive at this age alone in this time is a blessing. Even if we don't do anything with it, the fact that we're alive at this point in time, I think is a blessing. But I think that, in another 200 to 500 years, they're going to say, okay, the early 1900s was the age of industrial revolution. And then the early 2020s was the age of super intelligence getting started, right? And I think if you think about what that future looks like, what the future where super intelligence is more ingrained into our lives. Like today, a kid who's 10 years old who's getting into GSS1 has access to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Yes.
Has access to
Yes, they
PhD
do.
level,
What of information,
and data, right? So how do we rethink that? And what that means is, for me, because of the where we're at as a country and as a continent, there are a lot of problems to solve. I don't think it's an issue. I think we're actually better off. When you think about the demographic situations across the rest of the world, right? The share of the population of European countries and America versus Africa. And Asia, the next 100 years are going to look very
Different.
Yeah.
I think it's
150
clear.
years,
Yes.
right? And in that sense, we often think about it, and I'll talk about this, later. We often think about, where we're at as a disadvantage.
As
But
opposed to
It is an advantage.
because when we're building our roads now, we're not building our roads the way they built their roads 100 years ago.
So true.
You can go build that road with the latest technology.
Yes.
Right? You're building something to solve education. You can use it you build it with the latest technology. You want to figure out manufacturing, you're building it with the latest technology. We're going to and it's the biggest evidence of this is China.
Yeah.
Right? The economy and cities and society that China has built over the last 20 to 30 years have very, it's almost unimaginable relative to many developed countries, because they didn't build on legacy systems, right? Their rail systems were built on the latest technology. The cities were built on the latest technology. And I think for me, that's the advantage that we have. But we need, and this is the last point here, is we need to be able to help our people see it as well. People need to be able to connect to themselves.
Yes,
I
they
feel
do.
like because of the amount of negativity we've put around our nation, because of the amount of negativity we've put around just generally where everything is at.
The continent,
we have,
in fact.
Yeah, we have a lot of people who do not feel like they have the ability to make something happen. And if you do not feel like you have the ability to make something happen, you're likely not going to learn.
Make it happen, yes.
And
And
you're
even
likely
then,
not going to go and do experiential
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So that's, clarity as well is also important.
Wow, such
Yes.
deep insights.
I
Oh my
know.
God.
It's so philosophical.
Quite
And it's always
You warned
reflecting.
us. We just didn't know. We did not know how much philosophy to expect. But those are such deep insights. Such deep insights. Just thinking about the experiential learning. I feel like that's something that's really missing, and that we need to begin to pay attention to invest in, and to make sure that. I mean, just imagine you saying that at 11. You were able to travel around national contests, going out of your immediate comfort zone.
Exposure.
That
The
exposure is
brain.
really good for the mind, and it makes you see what other people are doing and see
Yes.
what you are able to do. In fact, it makes me remember a friend of mine who said he was let out of home by age 6. His parents sent him out. He went to live with an aunt in a harem style dwelling, so he got exposed to a larger community of people. Then from there he was shipped off to another continent where he the training experience was crafted to be experiential.
Yes.
And the results are very obvious, so we can't run away from experience. That's so helpful for you to share that.
It is. And like you said, the possibilities then become endless. It opens up your mind to see things differently.
Yeah.
I know that you will still speak a bit more about the opportunities that exist just by virtue of the program that you run and operate. But I'm looking at the fact that, Nigeria's population, median age is 18? And we have the 70% of Nigerians under the age of 30. So when we look at technology and the age that we are in now, if we could just harness that and move a large percentage of people towards technology, then we know where Nigeria can be, you know. But we think about the fact that it's not just as easy as just moving them there, and I know that you've been on this for 2 years. So what would you say has been the hardest people problem that you have faced in trying to get millions of Nigerians into technology? I know it could be a mix, but what have you faced? And I do want to ask, how did you get into technology, even as because I don't think that that's something we have. So I think what we should do, how did you, Francis, get into technology? I know you've been, sketching around it, but you've been at that center. So how did you get into technology?
That's an interesting question.
From design seminar.
From Dream Seminar was
From Dream Seminar.
Dream Seminar was one piece. I think technology for me was me getting into technology started with Yali.
Okay.
So after uni, I went into management consulting. I was doing management consulting for businesses in Ife. Was a little bit of a small big boy. Then I got into Yali, the regional, program we did in the Badagry. We had 150 youth leaders from across West Africa for 5 weeks. I had gone to Ilorin for 1 week for one program that the government was running. I don't even remember the details. So I got there, 1 week late. But when I went there, I think for me, it was a unique experience because it was unique for me because at the time I was 21. I was with, all of these incredible people. But I think particularly I went in and I thrived, right? So that was keen. So for me as someone who had spent a lot of my time in Ife, yes, I had traveled around the country at that age, but a lot of my exposure was still tied to Ife physically.
Okay.
Going into that sort of environment with folks from different parts of the world, of the country, of the continent rather, and thriving, was an important confidence and boost for me.
Yes.
But more importantly was the night before we left, I sat with Femi Romini. He was in the program as well, in his room, and it was like, what are you doing in Ife? So why are you being a big fish in a small pond? He mentioned, do you know that one day you could become a venture capitalist and run a venture capital firm? I had no clue what venture capital was then, right? Like, but what are you saying? But it was like, it was just like, come to Lagos and try your luck, right? And, try to just do stuff. And it was such a very useful conversation. And his support was extremely essential. The program was in September, I think. He asked me to find the top, organizations I wanted to work for. I looked at it and I thought innovation consulting made sense because I was doing,
Management consulting at the time.
And I was like, okay, technology as well is interesting. So let me try to find some of the best organizations trying to, support technology entrepreneurs as this might be the future. So I applied to all of the top ones. I created unique cover letters for each of them, which was a painstaking process. I got into a couple of interviews. I mistakenly got into CcHub. It was it by mistake, as you remember, because CcHub didn't respond to me, but fortunately Tunje Leshov, because I sent it to info at. What was I thinking? I was like,
when we're looking at info,
I sent it to info at. But luckily, I sent to info at Growth Capital as well. But Growth Capital at that time was a small entity, and I think Mr. Tunji was looking at the emails and he invited me for a chat. And luckily, I met HM on that day and also met Tom on that day. And 2 weeks later, I was in CcHub, right? So I think for me, it was me having done all of that and getting that push from Femi to say, you could do more outside of the things that I was trying to do. Getting that push and acting on that push and getting the opportunity to get into CcHub. And once I get into CcHub was, there are fewer platforms that are as transformational as CcHub.
I can tell.
Wow. Yeah.
To the question, though, in terms of
how does
the others problem, I think it's similar to the problem that startup founders face, building solutions on the continent and in emerging markets, where when you're building the solutions in a society where the institutions aren't as mature yet, so it means that you not only have to build your private entity, but you also almost have to build appendages that the public sectors and the public institutions should have built. So it means that, when you want to solve a problem in the country or in emerging markets, you're not just solving your problem. You have to solve other problems that would make your client or your consumer be able to actually, use your service. And I think it's the same thing, right? The project today, we have Nigerians from every single local government, right? So local governments I've never heard of. Local governments I'm sure you've never heard of as well. But we also have people from very diverse circumstances, right? And I think for me, some of the biggest challenges is just the barriers that exist. And that's, what we need to figure out. So it's not enough to say you find and create this world-class, program where people can come and learn. But if that person has to choose between being a bus conductor or between, doing some job that's going to give him food for that day and coming to learn, the stakes are high. That person has to choose between, taking care of their family, right, versus, buying data, right, especially with the current inflation rates, the stakes are high. The person has to think about the distance of this facility to where they live. We have many fellows who trek, to their centers.
The centers.
Right. You think about the devices, right? So like you need devices to learn, but the average good device is #1 million. You're going to get a good 256 gig Core i5,
i5, not even i7.
Yes. 1.1 million naira, right? Like maybe you get people who can get it in Lagos, but if you go to certain parts of the country. So I think it is similar to, there are those issues outside of the training
real
itself,
training
that you almost have to figure out how to solve
before
even solving the training. But regardless, we have to figure those things out. Especially when you're thinking about things from a public sector standpoint. The HM, it continues to find very innovative ways for us to figure it out. The president is also very keen on this, and I think, I think this administration is going in the right direction, to be honest, even though it often doesn't come across as such because of, obviously everything that's going on. But in terms of just the direction and some of the outputs, I think it's been positive.
Yes.
And I think that, the scale of the problem is large. And the least we can do is to put in our best to try to solve that problem as much as we can.
Wow, well done, well done. Just thinking about there's a problem, and then there are problems even before the real problem. Then even while the problem is ongoing, there are problems around. The problem gives birth to more problems, and so you're constantly fighting fires. You're constantly having to create or design solutions outside of the initial one solution that you had. Wow, I'm not even trying to imagine the skill sets of the people you have on your team or the amount of work that you have to do. But yes, thank you for at least just sharing a bit about the complexity of Nigeria, because Lagos is not Nigeria.
So true.
And it's difficult for people to understand sometimes. And there are 36 other states, because there are 37 in total, right, with the FCT, that you have that operate differently, and you have to solve for every state and every individual within those states as well. So thank you. Thanks.
You must derive a lot of satisfaction, just from processing how to solve all these problems.
Satisfaction and headache.
But when you think about Nigeria's tech future, right, what excites you? What are the prospects, that gives you joy? And share with us the flip side as well. What are those things that make you deep, energy-wise?
That's a great one. I think I feel like, I'm a self-acclaimed prophet nowadays. I go about the prophecy of Nigeria.
We didn't laugh because the prophet really has no honor, and you have honor. Anyway. I didn't laugh. Yes. Carry on.
At the end of the century, we would be the fourth largest population in the world. At the end of the century, we would have the fourth largest economy in the world, right? I genuinely believe that Nigeria is the success story of the 21st century. China may be of the first half, but I think of the 21st century, Nigeria is the success story, if we play our cards right. And I think it starts with belief, right? I think it starts with belief, with understanding that is possible. We have a large black race. I don't, in my personal opinion, we've not seen a very prosperous black nation in a while.
Yes.
There have been many in the past, but they are far too few now, even if they exist. I think that Nigeria is so unique. And the interesting thing about Nigeria, which is why I think it's such a great template, is Nigeria is so diverse. So Nigeria is representative of African culture and the African makeup and African diversity. If Nigeria can figure out, despite its diversity, a way to become prosperous, number one, naturally, it's going to influence the rest of the black nation. And the reason why I say this is, and it's just something that came to me when I was in Kigali earlier this year, and I was talking to my friends, and I realized that over 60% to 70% of the culture that they consume is Nigerian.
It is.
Right? The way we think about the Western culture influencing our culture.
Africa,
Nigerian culture influences the rest of Africa. And I think, again, which is why I like to speak about things philosophically sometimes, because I think more Nigerians and more Africans generally need to reflect and understand their role as individuals in birthing this. And I think that in terms of the future, once again, Nigeria is going to be the success story of the 21st century, which is the age of superintelligence.
Wow.
There's nothing more exciting than that. There's nothing more exciting than the fact that this is the century where humanity becomes multiplanetary. This is the century, potentially the decade, where humanity gets to Mars. If humanity gets to Mars this decade, before the end of 2050, humanity is going to be in more than one planet, right? And this is the century where Nigeria has some of the most talented people, not just from a technical standpoint, from a cultural standpoint. When Nigeria has some of the best, just people, humans. The kindness, the vibe, the energy.
Yeah, the culture.
The only thing we give to the world is the vibe.
Vibe on vibes.
Substantial enough, right? Because there's nowhere you go, anywhere in the world, where the Nigerian doesn't stand out. And I don't say that from a
pride
standpoint of pride. It's just simple. As a nomad, whenever I traveled, right, whether I was in Dubai or Ghana or wherever it is I went, anywhere I went to, when there was a group of Nigerians, you could always see the excellence standing out, right? So I think that from a technology standpoint, this is the century of superintelligence. We're going to likely live in a more decentralized world in the future. There are different, school of thoughts about how superintelligence and the advancement of artificial intelligence would advance or would modify the societal structure. It will be interesting to see. Obviously, we can't predict,
Yes.
and time will tell. Well, one thing that is a bit more common is decentralization, right?
Yes,
Of
it is.
corporates, of value creation, of societal networks. And I think that is an advantage, right? Because we are naturally decentralized, right? We are not a very centralized, we're not historically a very central, we've not run on centralized systems. So in a decentralized world where a small group of people somewhere in Bauchi State can build a solution that is used by 1 million people internationally, and someone different across the world, across the country can do stuff. It then means that we have the opportunity to add a lot of value to that future.
Yes.
So the future I see is one where more young Nigerians, especially with some of the infrastructure that the minister is leading by providing access to internet and providing the foundations for this digital future. When we give more Nigerians the infrastructure and you give them the tools, they've already shown that when you don't give them the tools, they will create incredible things like we have done with the Unicans and the other sectors. Just imagine
When
What they'll
happens
do.
when
get
they
the
have the
tools.
tools.
And I think for me, the thing there would be to say, my comment there would be to say that it's important for the citizens to be aware of their responsibility. Everybody has a responsibility. Today, we think about the responsibility largely from a government standpoint in terms of building our nation. But nations are built by people.
Yes, they are. Yes.
Yeah.
In silence, right?
Pin
I
drop
was-
silence. Oh my God, I'm literally a sponge mopping up everything you're saying. So Francis, can you tell us? You have some very insightful and interesting perspectives. What shaped your perspectives?
Life.
In summary, but let us into the details.
Yes, I think for me, my friend and I, Wale Adegoke, we launched a new project on our birthdays. We have to share a birthday.
Okay.
And it's called Ogbon and Ule. So it's knowledge and wisdom
Okay.
in local languages. And then we're talking about the origin of curiosity, which I think is probably a key part of shaping perspectives, right? And for me, one of my earliest recollections of curiosity was being in my mother's kitchen parboiling fish. I had the special privilege of being the fish parboiler growing up. And for some reason, I just sat that evening and just wondered where I came from, right? And just wondered where, who's God? Where is God? What is all of this? Why does it matter? And I think since then, it's been a journey. It's continues to be a
to answer
journey
that question.
of curiosity. And I think that is, it's been a rebellious journey as well, because it means for you to go down some of these routes, especially as someone like me who grew up in a very Christian and very Catholic background. I think my mother is not always going to be so happy about some of the perspectives I have. And I think that that curiosity, going on this journey of life of experimenting and doing many things and learning and failing significantly, but just meeting incredible people, meeting people like Tom and people who have always showed guidance. I think all of that has been useful. I think the most critical moments would be deciding when I left CcHub and got into magic to travel the world. I think I was at the point where I had two options. It was either I became a Lagos big boy, get a car, get a nice house, and chill in Lagos, or I take a step to do something that my soul wanted me to do, and I sold all of my stuff, got a suitcase and just traveled for almost 2 years.
Oh wow!
Right, and I think that journey of being unattached, like at every single point in time, the only thing I had was a suitcase. At every single point in time, I was a stranger in a country. I had to learn how to make friends. I had to learn how to navigate things. I had to sit with myself, reflect. I think that for me was very instrumental in the past couple of years
I
in
can
terms of
imagine.
then shaping how I think about things today and my approach to life in general. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Yeah. Tom said we should not say too much wow, but oh wow.
Oh wow. Awesome. So I have to admit I was just looking at him and smiling. I was just nodding. And I didn't want to be caught saying oh wow 100 times within that. And I was just thinking, how many titles can we get from this when we have the tools? Are possible. I was all over the place. But it's nice to see someone as positive,
Absolutely.
as you about our nation. And we need a lot of that. I'm patriotic, but I think that even yours.
I am as well.
Yes, we are.
Just to say.
But I think
and
that
the thing. Sorry, just because you had asked for the flip side.
Yes.
I think one thing that is going to be a significant barrier to us achieving that is actually what you're saying. We need to be nationalists. Nigerians need to realize that we live in a world of geopolitics. I think we're seeing it more and more. Trump and everything that's happening with the US and also in Europe is going to make it more evident. And people realize that there's actually geopolitics, right? And people do want to protect themselves.
Yes, they do.
Right? And we need to ask ourselves, yes, we're not in the best place today, right? But we are what we have, right? Why do we have a nation with 230 million plus people, 100 million people under the age of 25, and the amount of sectors in our country that are unproductive is, potentially over 80% of our sectors are not at the level of productivity they need to be.
Yeah, they should attain.
It is, I would say, from my viewpoint, because we don't feel the connection to the country.
There's a detachment.
There's a detachment. We don't feel like, oh, this pothole, I should go and think about an innovation to fix this.
Yes.
Or this problem in society, I should go and think about innovation to fix it because it is my country. Because it is my... So maybe...
Ownership comes up there again.
Okay, your community, your people, even if that's where you want to go, there needs to be that ownership of the nation. There needs to be that ownership of the vision, because that is going to be the thing that drives people to solving problems, to pushing the barriers that need to be pushed for us to be able to have the future that I painted.
Yeah.
Sorry for cutting you short.
No, I think you cut short because you were touching on
actually.
something I was already saying, which makes sense. So we can see the flip side as well as all the possibilities that you have listed. And I know that we've gone very deep and philosophical, but as we're landing, I want us to move into the man Francis, not Francis the sage. Francis the philosopher. We want to come down to the man Francis. And I know you read a lot. We read a lot. Just to give context, I remember one time I'd put a group of people and I'd said I wanted them to read a book. And they were meant to be presenting this book to me, but I had so much to do. I had to get Francis to read the book and summarize it as a story to me. I have to. That was my own cheat code at the time. And when they were presenting, I was there going, look, I remember that part. Was that the part where there was a part they said her name? I didn't know that part. I was like, I said that Francis was not going to be the death of me.
Tell me this part.
And then someone said, so did you see that part? Do you remember seeing that part? I was like, girl, you shouldn't be asking this question. I'm the asker of questions here. But I read a lot. And I know that, Francis, you read a lot. And that's what sort of informs a lot of your thought process and how you write as well. So in just thinking, and we're playing around with what's one book now, what's one song, what's one movie that is heavy on your mind, or something that you watched once and you just know that's going to be my best film forever, regardless of whatever comes out. So one book that you would be sharing today.
The Alchemist.
Yes, okay, good. One song.
Novocaine.
Novocaine.
By Frank Ocean. It's my
Frank
get off
Ocean.
a plane. It's my get off a plane song. It's whenever I travel, that's the song it's a very what's the word? It's not a very Christian song.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily listen to lyrics, but the rhythm of
the rhythm of the song. So when you say
it's
get off the
stuck
plane,
with me.
as you're getting off the plane,
Yeah, whenever I'm going to a new city, I have my
you want to come
earphones
down.
plugged
You want to
in.
come step out to that.
I'm really just like Novocaine.
Novocaine. And The Alchemist. Why The Alchemist as a
The
book?
Alchemist. I think, it's probably one of the best books in terms of the journey of life.
Awesome.
Right. And
Awesome.
I think if people read it, I think your perspectives and your individual journey of life, the vanity of it all, but also the weight of it all becomes a bit clearer.
Wow. And one movie.
This was interesting because Prison Break is one of my favorite all-time movies. But, I was like, okay, I need to have something local. And I'm actually going to go with To Kill a Monkey.
To Kill a Monkey, okay.
Because of how I feel like there are movies, and I don't think we've had so many in recent times that set cultural movements. Like literally, the way I know this is my birthday was recently, and almost 50% of my guys that texted me used brotherly instead of brother. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
Yeah. I haven't.
Oh,
but I've seen clips of it. Yeah.
I have seen clips as well.
So one of the things that comes
Say
out
brotherly.
Right, and the cultural effect that the movie has had, but also just the emotions. I think for me, Nigerian excellence is Nigerian expression in film and storytelling, and the work that Kemi Adetiba is doing at that level of excellence. For me, it's just very inspirational.
Doing a great job.
Awesome. So The Alchemist, Novocaine, and To Kill a Monkey.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great.
So, we've heard the exciting part of you, and then, Tom has brought us down a little bit from
We're getting off the plane now.
From the philosopher, right? If you were not working, in tech and policy, what would you be doing?
I think that was easy, to be honest. I feel like I would have a backpack.
As before.
Yeah, I would have a backpack. There are 200 countries in the world. Heaven is nice, but God created Earth.
Oh my God!
Yeah, He did.
Francis.
And I think as a human, the privilege to be able to experience as many countries, as many cultures, as much of this planet, and hopefully as much of future planets, if I get the opportunity to do so in my lifetime, is going to be the greatest privilege of my life. So if I wasn't doing this work today, and I do plan after some point when I feel like some part of my prophecy is fulfilled, I would be a philosopher. I would write, a bit more often. I would travel as much as possible. I would meet people, spend time with people, and express as many of my talents as God would allow me to, and express as much of the world as God would allow me to.
Wow. Francis. If we were to summarize this, it seems to me like you're saying I would live fully.
Yes.
Yeah. Every day.
Every day.
Oh, goodness.
Wow. So that we don't do well enough. It's time to, Francis, as always, it's been great having you on People.
So great. So great.
We're happy we got to do this live. We got to do this in person. I think the energy has been really high and really good. So thank you for joining us on People.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Francis, for spending this time with us.
Absolutely. Awesome. Back to Lagos traffic.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of On People. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Francis as much as we did. Don't forget to subscribe and listen on your favorite podcast platforms. To keep the conversation going, drop comments, ask questions on our social media handles. Until next time, bye-bye for now.